Welcome once again to BoCo Preps TV. I'm Pat Rooney. With me today is longtime colleague Paul Willis. And since we last checked in on BoCo Preps TV, we've finally gotten underway with the fall sports schedule. Boys tennis, boys golf, and softball have already been underway. Everyone else gets started this week. And Paul, as much as we love all those sports, today we're here to talk about football. A few week zero games last week, but obviously everything gets underway in earnest this week. Week 1 football. And here in the BoCo Preps coverage area, we're very fortunate to have two defending state champions, 3A Silver Creek, 4A Monarch. And Paul, you've covered Monarch quite a bit the last few years. Ethan Marks is back. Seems like they on paper they have a lot of returning starters from last year's Class 4A state champions. Tell us a little bit about what we can maybe expect out of the Coyotes this year and what kind of chances they have at a repeat run.
Well, the Coyotes were ranked 1 to start the season, and it wasn't just because of respect from winning the title. They return loaded. Running back Ethan Marks, as you mentioned, he returns with Logan Sewell in the backfield, and the fullback, Braden Papp, is back. The thing everyone's wondering about is how Jay McIntyre is going to fit in, and this is just my suspicion, not from any inside knowledge from seeing him, but it looks like the offense is going to open up a little bit. Coyotes known for grinding down the field, and McIntyre gives them a new dimension, running as the QB and throwing. He's just a phenomenal athlete. So it's going to be interesting to see how he fits in and maybe changes that offense a little bit.
And Paul, with Jay McIntyre, obviously a great pedigree there. I think Monarch threw the ball all of 36 to 40 times last year. Safe bet that we'll see a little bit more aerial fireworks such as it is out of Monarch?
Well, I had talked to Sewell earlier in the season, and or earlier in camp, and Sewell said, I think we'll throw the ball a little more, but it's still our offense. So you won't see a complete overhaul, but I imagine more than 36 throws, yes.
Similar situation over at Silver Creek in that the Raptors return a lot of starters from last year's 3A state championship game. The Raptors actually already got started last weekend in Florida, getting a win on the road. The big news is quarterback Ben Shabakin accounted for 4 TDs down there in Florida. Coach Mike Apodaca's wide open offense seems to be clicking on all cylinders. You know, last year Shabakin was kind of an unknown quality coming in on the heels of Austin Apodaca, now at Washington State's record-setting quarterback. But with Shabakin running the show, Silver Creek already looks to be clicking right where it left off at the end of last year. But I think one of the big stories with the Raptors is perhaps defensively, maybe an overlooked unit at Silver Creek. Last year in their last 2 games in the state tournament, and especially in the final against Rifle, they shut down 2 of the biggest, most productive rushing offenses in the state. Much of that group is back this year. Linebacker Andre Apodaca, lineman Levy Cecil are back, and that unit doesn't get as much attention as the offense does over at Silver Creek, but it's every bit as good. And one little tidbit I picked up during the preseason is lineman Isaac Miller, CU recruit for the offensive line, told me he might be moonlighting just a little bit on that defensive line this year. So obviously that will be a huge help to a unit that's already very strong. And Paul, I know during the preseason there was one other kind of interesting story you were following out of Erie. What is up with the Erie Tigers field? I know they have already rescheduled a couple home games. Will they be able to get back on their home field before too long here? I know there was substantial flood damage from a storm a few weeks ago.
That's still up in the air. So far, the first 2 games, the first 2 home games, Erie plays Berthoud and Skyline, and both of those have been moved to Meade, so Erie will have home games at Meade. It remains to be seen whether the field will be repaired in time to play any home games. It's insurance issues, it gets real deep, it's kind of beyond the football team, so it'll be an interesting story to follow. For now, Erie's trying to plug along business as usual, but it's kind of a dicey situation there with the field.
You know, to take a quick glance at a couple of other teams out of the St. Vrain area, you just mentioned one. Skyline gets started on Friday night against Niwot, a little cross-down showdown action. And Skyline, it could be interesting over there. Obviously not a lot of success with the Falcons over the last half dozen years or so. They won 3 of their last 4 games last year. They have a dynamic quarterback in Garrett Angstead, who accounted for over 2,300 yards last year, rushing and passing. Over 20 touchdowns, and that was only in 9 games. Skyline is pretty pretty excited about being able to kind of continue that momentum into this year. And I think it'll be a kind of an interesting showdown against Niwot on Friday night, Everly Montgomery Stadium. I'm sure neither coach wants to put too much stock into a week 1 game like this, but Niwot's coming off of first season of Coach Josh Brewer. Obviously, you always expect to make strides in that second year, and Niwot does that. While they are trying to replace quarterback Nate Merriman, they do have kind of an interesting mix of skill position players. Elijah Noterman is a top-notch receiver, and I think the results of that Friday night, I'm sure neither coach is going to say it's going to account for what's going to happen the whole season, but I think it'll be a pretty interesting matchup to see which direction these teams go the rest of the season. A couple other interesting games to maybe check out on Friday night. Broomfield hosting 5A Power Pomona. Holy Family in a small school showdown hosting Faith Christian. And Longmont has a tough task in their season opener, traveling over Arvada to take on 5A Power Ralston Valley, who really just decimated Mullen last week. One final note, the Boulder schools. I know Boulder High will open on Saturday in Denver against George Washington. This will mark the beginning of the Bob Simmons era at Boulder. As a former Oklahoma State head coach, former CU assistant, tries to turn around the Panthers program. And Friday night will be interesting to see how Fairview fares in its opener against Pooter. Fairview went 5-5 last year. Never really got on track. They had a lot of injury situations, one of which was to Anders Hill, their quarterback. He came on strong late, had a good run the last 4 games. Fairview put up huge numbers in the passing game and probably will again with Sam Martin at receiver. He's led the state in almost every receiving category that you can imagine last year. Fairview will put up the numbers again this year through the passing game. If they can improve even a little bit on defense and in the rushing game, I think Fairview might be a little bit of a dark horse to watch in Class 5A. Well, once again, thanks again for tuning in to BoCo Preps TV. And with Paul Willis, actually I did a little bit of math earlier today, very little. And this will be the 14th consecutive school year that you and I have worked together. So there's that, and looking forward to some more games.
Yeah, Rocky Post in here, 14 years.
So, well, hopefully a few more are on the horizon. And once again, thanks for tuning in, and enjoy the games this weekend.